The Zori were gentle collectors. They traveled across the stars, gathering rare and fascinating creatures from many worlds, not to study them, but to care for them. Their biodomes were filled with soft mimics from Orlanth Prime, whispering ferns from Catava Minor, and tiny gem-eyed crawlers from Zexi 4, all resting on soft cushions or in special homes. The Zori loved how harmless and easy to train their pets were. So, when a small human escape pod was pulled from the wreckage orbiting their homeworld, it was no surprise that Counselor Tavash declared, "We shall keep it." The human, whose name they learned through some effort was Adam Parker, had been battered, bruised, and barely breathing when they brought him into the Biodome's care suite. His right leg was fractured, though not compound, his ribs were bruised, and he had suffered a mild concussion. He was stabilized under Zori medical pods, which accelerated clotting, adjusted bone alignment, and ensured hydration. But as the Zori soon realized, human recovery was not like that of their usual pets. Adam regained consciousness 2 days later, still sore, his leg immobilized in a brace, the bone not fully healed. His ribs hurt when he twisted, and the world swam a little when he sat up too quickly. Tavash watched him intently, 4 glossy black eyes blinking in turn. "You will be comfortable here," Tavash declared with a gentle tone. Adam, squinting against the light, groaned. "Where am I?" "In the care of the Zori," Tavash said proudly. "We tend to the small ones." Adam's face twisted. "Small ones?" Tavash waved a tendril toward a nearby pen, where a bright blue lizard the size of a kitten was curled on a silk cushion. "You will adapt here." Adam coughed, grimacing. No, I don't think so." The Zori were confused by his stubbornness. Over the following days, Adam repeatedly attempted to get up, testing his injured leg, ignoring warnings to stay still. He asked endless questions about the Zori, the biodomes, their tech, the orbiting vessels. He mapped the room with his eyes, memorized patterns, and made mental notes the Zori didn't understand. "He is restless," Tavash reported to the council after a week. "Heem is recovering," another corrected. "Humans require longer convalescence," added the healer, examining the scan of Adam's healing tibia. "Even with our assistance, bones take time." But Adam wasn't only restless. He was observing. And when, after 2 weeks, he limped into the adjacent room on his still tender leg, surprising the care drones, the Zori grew concerned. "Return to your cushion, little one," Tavash urged. Adam looked at the towering alien, chest rising and falling with quiet determination. "I'm not your pet." The words puzzled Tavash, but more alarming was the fact that Adam's limp didn't stop him from reaching the security panel. The Zori were twice his size, armored in sleek exosuits, their limbs delicate but strong, yet Adam pried open the access panel with a strip of metal he had scavenged from his own brace. Tavash rushed forward. Adam didn't fight with brute strength. He twisted, turned, and used his smaller size to wedge between the alien's grasping limbs. He jammed the panel with a sparking wire, drawing a short burst of static that staggered the Guardian drones. For a species that adored control, the chaos Adam generated was incomprehensible. By the time Tavash's personal guards arrived, Adam was gone. The biodome descended into uproar. The Zori weren't a violent people, and their security systems were designed to handle wandering pets or malfunctioning drones, not a cunning, desperate human. "Seal the biodome. Activate thermal tracking," barked Tavash, voice tense. But Adam didn't run blindly. He watched the guards' patrol routes, noting how they hesitated at intersections. He found ventilation shafts too narrow for Zori bodies, but wide enough for him. His injured leg slowed him, but he pressed on, teeth gritted, pain sharp and immediate. At one point, he leaned heavily against a wall, sweat slick on his forehead, heart pounding. He was tired, underfed, and recovering from injuries that should have kept him down, but his mind burned with one single truth. I have to get out of here. The Zori, for all their technology, didn't understand why. They assumed the human would stay if provided comfort. They were baffled by the sheer force of his will. After 4 hours, Adam reached the outer maintenance corridor. He hacked the access terminal using a combination of trial, error, and a sharp shard of glass to override the biosign locks. The doors slid open. Beyond lay the Zori vessel's docking ring. Alarms blared. Savage stared in horror at the surveillance feed. How? No creature, no pet had ever escaped containment. Not the swift-winged flyers, not the tunnel diggers from Lixar, not the shape-shifting shimmer beasts, none. But here was Adam, limping, hurting, half-healed, but moving with purpose, outpacing trained Zori handlers. He cannot leave, Tavash hissed. Adam skidded into the docking bay, ducked under a transport's loading arm, and hauled himself up the ramp. His leg buckled, sending him sprawling. He gritted his teeth, inhaled sharply, and forced himself upright. Pain bloomed hot and sharp, but he didn't stop. A Zori pilot intercepted him, raising its limbs in warning. "Human, you must stand down." Adam's laugh was ragged. "Yeah, not today." With an iron rod scavenged from the maintenance bay, he swung low, knocking the alien off balance. He seized the pilot's control ring and jammed it into the panel, sparking the system alive. The engines whined to life. Across the comm grid, Tavash roared, "Do not let him escape!" But Adam had already plotted the jump. The Zori watched, speechless, as the stolen transport vanished into hyperspace. In the council chambers, silence reigned. Finally, one counselor whispered, "We thought he was a pet." Tavash's eyes were dark and wide. "No, he is something else entirely." A junior keeper, trembling, asked, "What is he?" Visage didn't answer right away. He gazed at the empty docking bay, where the little human, small, injured, determined, had outwitted and outfought them all. "Finally," Tavash murmured, "he is the galaxy's greatest threat, and we invited him in." The Zori War Council had not convened in a century. Not since the border skirmishes with the Sagati, not since the pirate raids from the Drawl Verge had there been reason. But now, across the circular chamber, the gathered elders shifted uneasily. Tavash stood at the center, voice taut. He escaped. Counselor Vren folded his arms, long fingers tapping. A single human, Tavash repeated quietly. Who, within 2 weeks, healed enough to overcome injuries that would have left many of our kind bedridden for months, who bypassed our defenses, who commandeered a transport. Where is he now? Tavash exhaled slowly. We lost the signal after his hyperspace jump. The words rippled through the chamber. The Zori rarely lost track of anything. Meanwhile, in a cramped freighter cabin streaking through unknown systems, Adam slumped heavily in the pilot's seat, cradling his leg. It was swollen, throbbing, every movement sending sharp spikes of pain up his thigh. He had hastily wrapped it, bracing it again with stolen med supplies, but he knew the truth. He wasn't out of danger. He was running on adrenaline, and that couldn't last. "All right," he murmured, pulling up the ship's navigation. "Where the hell am I?" The interface flickered between languages. Adam tapped cautiously, praying some symbols would match the rudimentary alien scripts he'd memorized in his brief captivity. Maps, charts, star systems spun before him. He zeroed in on one label, medical. He set course. 5 hours later, drifting toward an automated repair station, Adam gritted his teeth and hobbled onto the docking platform. The pain was worse now. His leg felt stiff and clumsy, and the bruising around his ribs ached whenever he inhaled too deeply. He forced himself through the station's narrow corridor, finding a med unit that looked halfway compatible with his physiology. The machine chirped uncertainly, scanning him. Fractured tibia confirmed. Significant bruising along rib cage. Mild concussion. Internal systems functional but stressed. Adam blew out a shaky breath. Yeah, no kidding. The med unit dispensed a bio-wrap for his leg and issued a stern warning. No weight bearing for 4 weeks, light activity only. Adam gave a bitter chuckle. He'd been sprinting, climbing, fighting. Now his body wanted him to rest. But the galaxy wasn't waiting. Back on the Zori homeworld, teams scrambled. "We must retrieve him," T-Vash ordered. "We cannot just hunt him," Counselor Vren protested. "The Galactic Concord would object." "Then we will warn them," T-Vash snapped, "that the human species is dangerous." The Concord, however, wasn't eager to listen. At a diplomatic assembly days later, T-Vash stood before delegates from 27 worlds. "Heme escape containment," T-Vash explained carefully. "He bypassed security systems no creature has ever breached. He exhibits adaptability, speed of learning, and stubborn resilience beyond what we believed possible." The Concord delegate, a sleek-furred Zentari, raised one brow. "You were keeping him as a pet?" T-Vash's jaw tightened. "That is irrelevant." "On the contrary," the Zentari murmured, "it seems very relevant." The Zori weren't used to having their warnings ignored. Meanwhile, Adam worked. With access to the station's supply network, he bartered and traded for data chips, survival gear, and planetary charts. He learned that the Zori occupied just one stretch of the galaxy, but beyond them lay dozens of species, governments, and alliances. Some might be friendly, some not. He needed to understand the game before making his next move. His leg was mending, though slower than the Zori's bioaccelerants had promised. By the 3rd week, he was limping with a crutch, testing his weight carefully. Sharp pain still radiated if he moved too quickly, and his ribs flared with discomfort if he overexerted. But he was alive, healing, and focused. On the 5th week, a shadow passed over the repair station. Adam, reading through system logs, froze. A Zori cruiser had entered orbit. "Hell," he muttered, pushing himself upright. His leg screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He knew now that the Zori weren't killers. They didn't want him dead. But they wanted control, and they wanted it badly. He darted to the docking bay, where an old skiff lay in disrepair. The station's mechanics had left it idle, parts stripped, but Adam saw opportunity. Over the past days, he'd quietly rebuilt its engine, reconfigured the power cells, and spliced the control systems. Now it was time to test whether his frantic handiwork would pay off. As Zori landing craft descended, Adam fired up the skiff's engines. They sputtered, coughed, then roared awake. "Come on, baby," Adam whispered. The docking clamps resisted, still magnetically locked. He crawled under the console, yanking a power conduit free and jamming it into the release panel. Sparks danced. The clamps disengaged with a loud clang. Above, T-Vash watched in disbelief as the ancient vessel lifted off, trailing engine smoke, wobbling dangerously but still flying. "Him repaired that wreck," T-Vash barked. "He should not have been able to," the technician murmured. Adam gunned the throttle, wincing as acceleration slammed his still bruised body back into the seat. The skiff shuddered, rattling dangerously, but climbed away from the station, slipping past the cruiser's targeting lock before they could respond. In the cruiser's command chamber, T-Vash clenched his fists. "He escaped again." Counselor Vren's voice crackled over the comm. "He is not a pet. He is not a specimen. He is something far more dangerous." For the first time, T-Vash agreed. Adam drifted into deep space hours later, nursing a swelling ankle and cursing under his breath. His body was exhausted, strained and weak, but his mind burned. Somewhere, someone out there would help him, or at least not treat him like an amusing house pet. He stared at the star field ahead, chest aching slightly when he laughed. Galaxy's biggest threat, huh? He didn't feel like a threat. He felt like a guy barely keeping it together, bruised inside and out. But something in the Zori's fear stayed with him. They had the ships, the tech, the resources, and still they were afraid. Because humans weren't just resilient, they were relentless. The skiff barely made it. By the time Adam limped it into the atmosphere of a small moon orbiting Varos Prime, its fuel cells were sputtering, the hull was scorched, and the life support system flickered on and off like an old motel sign. Adam's hands shook on the controls, not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. It had been 7 weeks since the crash. His tibia, though well mended now, still ached after long hours. The bruised ribs no longer lit up with sharp pain, but they throbbed dully every time he twisted too far. He was thinner, sharper, his clothes worn down, beard thick across his jaw. The landing wasn't graceful. The skiff coughed, dipped hard to the left, and crunched down on the rocky surface with a shudder that jolted Adam's healing body so hard he gritted his teeth to keep from groaning aloud. He sat still for a moment, forcing his breathing to slow, then eased himself up and out. The Varosi weren't like the Zori. Where the Zori gleamed with glass and gold towers and perfect biodomes, the Varosi built with stone and wire, grounding their lives in hardy practicality. They didn't keep pets. They didn't decorate their homes with rare creatures. They barely noticed Adam when he limped into their main settlement, wrapped in a patched coat, eyes sunken but determined. He collapsed in a heap outside the nearest medical station. 3 days later, Adam woke to the smell of bitter herbs and the rasp of an alien voice. "You are awake. That is good." He blinked against the dim light. His leg was propped on a support, his ankle newly wrapped. His ribs had been bound with sturdy fabric. The pain was manageable now, thanks to whatever medicine they had given him, but his body still felt wrung out, muscles aching, skin pale. The healer, a thin-limbed Varosi with wide-set eyes, sat nearby, stirring something in a steaming bowl. "You push yourself too hard." Adam gave a rough, tired laugh. "I've been told that." He spent the next 2 weeks regaining strength. No running, no fighting. Just carefully walking, eating, stretching sore muscles. The Varosi left him alone most of the time, curious but not intrusive. For the first time since the Zori, Adam felt like a person, not a possession. But peace never lasted. On the 15th day, a scout ran into the village square, breathless. "Zori's ship in orbit!" Adam's heart dropped. He barely had time to grab his jacket before the first landing craft descended. Devash didn't bring soldiers this time. He brought envoys. Smooth tongue, delicate hand, they stepped into the village square with soft voices. "We only wish to retrieve what is ours," they told the Varosi elders. Adam stepped forward, every movement deliberate, heart pounding. "I'm not yours." Devash regarded him quietly. "You are not a pet," he agreed, surprising Adam. "You are something far worse." Adam's jaw clenched. "I just want to go home." "You cannot. You know too much." Tavash's voice lowered. "You have exposed our vulnerabilities." The Varosi, though peaceful, weren't fools. As the tension thickened, their elders motioned quietly for the community to prepare escape tunnels to safeguard their young. Adam realized something then. This wasn't about him anymore. Wherever he went, he would drag trouble behind him, not because he wanted to, but because the Zori feared him, feared what he represented. He squared his shoulders. "You want me?" he called, voice echoing. "Then you'll have to work for it." And he ran. Not aimlessly, not wildly, strategically. He led them across the rocky ridges, through narrow gullies where the sleek Zori landing craft couldn't follow, over ledges too jagged for their long limbs. His legs burned, his ribs ached, his ankle flared with fresh pain, but he kept moving, faster, sharper, driving himself harder than any sane man would. By nightfall, the Varosi resistance fighters had slipped into position, flanking the distracted Zori envoys. When the trap snapped shut, Adam was already crouched high on a ridge, watching the scene unfold. The Zori didn't know how to fight wars. They knew how to collect. Adam, on the other hand, had learned. The next day, bruised, exhausted, and limping, Adam sat across from a Varosi elder, sipping bitter tea. "You are dangerous," the elder murmured, watching him closely. Adam rubbed his forehead tiredly. "I didn't mean to be—" The elder gave a low hum. "You are a catalyst. You don't merely survive. You ignite everything around you." Adam smiled faintly, though his whole body hurt. "That's just called being human." Far above, in orbit, Tavash sat in his dimly lit chamber, hands steepled, eyes downcast. He knew now that the human couldn't be recaptured. He couldn't be boxed up, caged, or neutralized like an unruly pet. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. Humans fought, not just with weapons, but with every ounce of stubborn ingenuity they could muster. Tavish finally whispered to himself, "We thought we understood strength. We were wrong." Adam, watching the sun rise over the jagged Varosi mountains, knew his journey wasn't over. He still had to find a way home, still had to navigate a galaxy where his species was suddenly marked as dangerous. But for now, he breathed in the cold air, felt the bruises along his ribs, stretched his mending leg and smiled despite himself. He wasn't just surviving, he was winning. Adam Parker never expected to become a symbol. Weeks passed after the standoff on the Varosi moon. His body continued recovering, slow but steady. His ankles still ached on cold mornings, his ribs twinged when he twisted too sharply, and deep fatigue crept into his bones if he overdid things. But compared to how far he'd come since the escape from the Zori, Adam knew he was lucky to be alive at all. The Varosi, once cautious, had warmed to him. He shared what he could about his species, their home, their strange resilience. He worked beside their engineers, helped fortify weak points in their defenses, taught them small tactical tricks, how to use terrain as leverage, how to disrupt sensors, how to rig decoys. Adam wasn't a soldier, but he'd been a firefighter back home, a problem solver, a man trained to act under pressure. And here, that counted for something. Meanwhile, the galaxy stirred. Tivash and the Zori spread warnings to neighboring systems. The human species cannot be trusted. They are not tame. They are not safe. Rumors multiplied faster than facts. Stories of a man who dismantled Zori's security with scraps, who outran landing ships on foot, who defied containment and turned peaceful worlds into sparks of resistance. Delegates from distant worlds began arriving at Varos Prime, hoping to see for themselves. Adam sat one evening on a stone ledge overlooking the settlement, sipping a steaming mug of Varosi spice tea. Across the square, representatives from the Lareth Coalition and 2 member worlds of the Conquered were gathered, whispering to each other, occasionally glancing in his direction. He exhaled slowly. "Not exactly how I thought I'd make galactic history." Beside him, Varosi Elder Yessen chuckled softly. "You understand, Adam, they don't fear you because of weapons or strength. They fear you because you don't break." Adam gave a tired grin. "I almost did." "We all do, sometimes, but you kept going." The next morning, the Conquered sent a delegation. They wanted answers, they wanted negotiations, they wanted to decide what to do about the human. Adam sat in a small council chamber, still a little stiff from sleep, his right leg stretched carefully in front of him. "What do you want, Adam Parker?" the Conquered envoy asked bluntly. He looked up slowly. "I want to go home." A long pause. The envoy, tall, slender, pale-skinned, tilted its head. "You understand the Zurari will never stop pursuing you." Adam ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't start this. I crashed on their world. They tried to cage me. I just wanted to survive." "Survival," the envoy said thoughtfully, "often creates ripples." Adam glanced around the chamber. "I didn't want to be anyone's ripple." The envoy folded its long hands. "But here you are." Within days, the council chambers of Varos Prime buzzed with debate. Should Adam be sheltered, hidden, exiled? Should the human species be contacted, warned, or left alone? Meanwhile, Adam worked quietly. He knew no one could guarantee his safety, not forever. The galaxy was too big, too dangerous, too politically entangled. But he also knew something else. His best shot was to leave a message. He spent days constructing a signal transmitter, patched together from Verosi components and salvaged tech from his old skiff. His hands were steadier now, his legs stronger, his breath fuller. When he activated the signal, it was the first message to Earth since his crash. To anyone listening, this is Adam Parker. I'm alive, I'm off-world, and I need help. For 2 days, no response. On the third day, his signal cracked to life. Adam, this is Earth Command. His heart stopped for a moment. Then it slammed back into motion. We're receiving you, stand by. Tuvash, watching from orbit, felt the shift ripple outward. This was no longer a matter of a lost pet. This was contact between two species, and one of them, the humans, was about to announce themselves to the galaxy. Back on Varos Prime, Adam sat in the square with Yasen, watching the sun dip behind the rocky cliffs. His chest ached faintly, his muscles still tired, but he felt something different tonight. He felt weight shifting off his shoulders. You will leave soon, Yasen said quietly. Adam nodded. Looks like it. The elder touched his arm gently. You brought change here, Adam Parker, not because you fought, but because you showed us how hard you were willing to try. Adam smiled faintly. I don't know if that's bravery or just stubbornness. Sometimes they are the same thing. The Earth retrieval ship arrived 1 week later. Sleek, gray, armored against the void, it descended through the thin clouds like a promise. Adam stood in the clearing, legs steady, heart pounding, bags packed. When the ramp lowered, a familiar voice crackled over the comm. Parker, you ready to come home? Adam's throat tightened. He hadn't let himself believe this moment would come. Yeah, he murmured. I'm ready. The Verosi gathered to watch him go. Tuvash, far above, quietly withdrew. The Conquered Council marked the day in their archives. Across the stars, news spread. The humans are coming. Adam limped up the ramp, every step solid, every breath deep. His body still bore the marks of his journey. The aches, the scars, the slow-healing bones. But he carried them like armor now. Inside the ship, he dropped into the padded seat, leaned back, and exhaled. He was going home. He had survived, adapted, outlasted, and outthought one of the most controlling species in the galaxy. Not because he was a soldier or a hero, but because he was human. Because he refused to give up. As the ship lifted into the stars, Adam Parker closed his eyes and smiled. Faintly, painfully,